Hey, everybody. Let's take a look at today's assignment, what you'll be working on, and that is the thesis statement. Okay. Now, the thesis statement is a super important part of the paper. It's one of the first things that we need to do because this really sets the expectation for the audience and it also sets the direction or the path that you will be on for your paper. So let's take a look at the assignment. Again, juniors, as I said yesterday, um, this is the senior documentation, but yours will look exactly the same. It's just a different topic, okay? So what we've got here is let's start with what is a thesis statement. And then I highlighted in yellow here the definition, and it is a one sentence statement of purpose. And I want you to really key on to those pieces. First off, it's one sentence. So it's only one sentence long, right? That's all we need to have is one sentence. Now, in a longer work, if you're writing a book, if you're writing a much larger piece, okay, the thesis statement may be up to a paragraph or even longer, really, to explain what your position is and what is the point that you're trying to argue or show or demonstrate, explain, right? But for what we're doing, this is a much shorter work. One sentence is completely enough for what we are doing. All right. Now, again, like it says here, this is the most important thing that you will do for your paper. It does two things for you. One, it tells the reader, this is what the paper is going to be about. This is the main idea. This is the one big thing that all of this paper is going to be about. It really gives them that sense of what they're getting into as a reading experience. Now, for you, the writer, this is really important because what this does is this creates a path for you. It's a measuring stick, and you can use that to measure everything else that you do. So when you find a source or when you start going down, writing a certain bit of information, whatever, you can look back to the thesis statement and say, okay, does this help address that? Does this help explain that? Does this help prove that? If it doesn't, then you have to really ask yourself if it's necessary in your paper. So it creates that path. These are the things that I'm going to be talking about, and these help keep me on track. In general, this is the last sentence in the introductory paragraph. I do know in the real world, it could be in a number of different places. And again, depending on your writing situation or what it is that you are doing, it could appear in other places. But for what we're doing here, let's go ahead and keep it the last sentence in the introduction. And then it gives you some information about the thesis statement. So we have here a chart, and I'm going to walk you through the sample portion. And of course, because this is the sample, I'm going to say, what's the big broad topic we're doing? Cheese dip, right? Now, seniors, you will be writing about genocide. Juniors, you'll be writing about criminal justice. So that would be the large, broad topic. But then what you're going to do then is you're going to narrow that down, and you want to focus on one particular element of it, right? One particular aspect. For me, I'm going to do the tracing of the long and confusing history of cheese dip. Okay. So what I've got is, what about cheese dip? I'm not going to talk, maybe I could talk about recipes. I could talk about what some of the best qualities of cheese dip are. But for the purpose of this paper, it's going to be the history of, right? And I'm going to say it's long and confusing. What is my purpose? Well, notice here that's pie, persuasive, informative, entertaining. Obviously, for our purposes here, this is an informative paper. And then what is my perspective? Okay, I really love cheese dip, right? That's my perspective. But I don't know its history. So, in other words, then, what I'm telling my readers, like, hey, I'm really into this, I don't know a lot about it. And so I'm trying to find my way through that, right? Okay, now when we look at the reasons here, so these are three areas that we want to look at. These are three reasons to explain that my perspective or my main idea. These are three elements, okay? Now, you can pick your elements. Notice on the research question, the first question is, what is? That could be one of your main points here, right? So you have the ability to kind of finesse this the way you want, but you are going to pick three areas to address. I'm going to do that. There's many different types of cheese dip. Okay, And so why is it confusing? Why is it long? Well, because there's a lot of different cheese dips, right? I'm also going to put on here that many people claim it. Many claim to be the first, right? Why is it confusing? Because there's so many people that claim to have invented it first. And then my third reason is that no one has really done a good history. It's really done a good history, right? Okay, so let's say that I want to focus on these things. So we started at cheese dip. I'm going to narrow it down to the confusing history of it. And then what are the three things that I really want to focus on, or what makes it confusing? Well, that there's a lot of different cheese dips. A lot of different people are claiming it to be theirs. And then there's no real good history out there. So let's go ahead. Let's write my thesis statement here. And I already have it here. The history of cheese dip is long and confusing. Why? Because there's so many different kinds of cheese dips to look at. So many people have claimed to be the first, and no one really has tracked this down. And so what I did was, notice what I've done with my thesis. I've given the reader a sense. What are we getting ready to read up? Oh, the history of cheese dip. Now, I've also created a mental path for my reader, right? So as my reader's going through this and they're like, okay, the first thing that they're going to talk about is the different kinds of cheese dip. Okay. And when I start moving into the next thing about who and how many people and who has claimed to be the first, I can mentally tick that off, like we're a third of the way through. When I get done with that, I'm 2/3 of the way through. And so I create this path for me. Now, if I'm doing my research and I'm going along and then I start to wander off into how much cheese dip costs or what some of the main ingredients are, I have to come back and look at this thesis statement and say, okay, does this really help explain that, right? Does that really help explain my thesis? Because if it doesn't, it's extraneous, it's distracting, it's not necessary in my paper. Okay, so what you will have down here, again, is the same process. I gave you the broad topic, you narrow it down, you give your purpose, you give your perspective, and then you give the three things that you would like to look at. Hey, this is a required assignment for those of you that are not here today. Please make sure that you are doing this and get it turned in. Miss McGuire and I will be looking at this. We'll be making sure that you do have a good thesis, because you are going to use this thesis tomorrow. When you do the introductory paragraph, when you write that, that's going to be literally copied and pasted over. Okay. So you want to make sure that this is right first. We will help you make sure that this is right before you copy and paste it over. Again, make sure that you're reaching out if you need help with anything. We look forward to seeing what you do.